Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Today's wonderful presenter that we have with us all the way from Florida, we have Brenda Watson. She is the founder of Vital Planet and Gut Health Guru. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm excited to share with you this evening or today. I'm in Florida, so it's this evening for us.
Exactly, with this time zone, it's all different, but happy evening to you and happy afternoon to everyone here on the West Coast. So today you are sharing with us some amazing information on Sibo.
Right. It's an interesting subject, and many people that have been more or less, I guess you could say, struggling with things like IBS in the over the years. There's been more research and science now that's come out about IBS and the sort of naming it to more Sibo and Sifo, which is what I'm going to be sharing with everyone this evening. So many times people would go to a doctor and they couldn't find out the reason they were having irritable bowel. And so now we have more diagnostic testing, people are aware of it. And so it's exciting to share the new information this evening and hopefully help a lot of people.
That is wonderful. Yeah, I had no idea that with IBS that it's actually SIBO. That's very interesting.
Right. I think for many years that they didn't, they obviously didn't know when you went and you had a lot of irritable bowel or maybe constipation, diarrhea. They didn't really, once a doctor rules out you don't have cancer, you don't, which is good, you have to do that. And they rule out all these things that could be very, detrimental to someone. And they finally go, well, we kind of don't know what's wrong. You have an irritable bowel, and that's sort of a catch-all for a lot of different things. So whether a person was experiencing diarrhea or constipation or flipping back and forth, which many people do, now due to science, and which we're, the microbiome project has brought a lot of this out, we are now able to understand a little bit more about what's going on in a person's digestive system and why they're experiencing some of the symptoms they are. So that's what I'll be sharing this evening.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I am super grateful that you're here with us, Brenda, and I am excited to digest all this information.
Yeah. Should we share screen?
Should we get started now?
Oh, yes, definitely. Let's get started, and I will continue to admit folks here into the Zoom meeting.
Okay, I need to share screen, I think. Yeah. Okay. Can you see us? Can you see it, Elizabeth?
Oh, yes. Looks fantastic.
Great, great, great. Okay. So do you want to wait a couple of minutes or do you want me to get started?
We can wait a few moments. I know that you've been in the health industry for many, many years. Yeah, and I think it's so wonderful that you were also on a PBS too.
Yes, for years. Yes.
Yes.
On PBS in terms of educating people, starting probably in around 2004-05 time period. So we had PBS shows and written books that went along with some of the shows. So, a lot of books, and people that want to know more about our books can go on to brendawatson.com, where they can order, like Road to Perfect Health, Gut Solutions, which those two are reference books for all different types of digestive conditions. And then we had Heart of Perfect Health, which is more about the gut's relationship to heart issues. So if you go on, there's probably 7 books at this point in time that are on there, and then you can order those on off of the BrendaWatson.com website is what I'm saying. And then knowing that each of those, we just about with each of those, we did a PBS show. So I actually did a lot in that Seattle area at the PBS station there. We have a really good following in that particular area. Remember that, B? Yeah, we did. So it
Oh,
was
that is
great.
so amazing. And to be able to have you here virtually, here with us back in the Pacific Northwest is such an honor. So thank you so much, Brenda, for all that you do and being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm happy to be here.
Yay! Well, all right, let's go ahead and get started, and I will continue to moderate for the Zoom meeting.
Okay, text me when you're leaving. I'm just getting my staff here. They're helping me. I'm not techie, so I don't want to like flub up anything.
Oh, no, you got this.
Okay, I hope so. But thank you for having me, and I'm excited about being here and teaching people new things. We've got to follow the science, and we've got to understand new things. And I have my water in a jug, so I'm going to drink that as we go along.
Yes, hydration is key.
It really is. It really is. So tell me when to start.
You are ready to go.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. And I'm here to share with you a lot of the new information regarding the digestive system, obviously. And the topic tonight is, or this afternoon is going to be SIBO. Let me explain what that means. Small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or small intestinal fungal overgrowth. Let me back up a minute. For many years, when I've been in this 30 years, a long, long time. And when I first got into this because in the late 1980s, so it's been a long time, because I had digestive issues, but I had nowhere to go with them. I mean, I had done everything in traditional medicine, and in the late 1980s, I really just walked into a health food store one day and I said, I don't know what to do anymore. Can you help me? And that's when, and remember, that was when we didn't know very much, but as always, the health food stores were very more informed about how to change my diet, the cleansing things I needed to do, because my main problem really, once you boiled it all down with all the symptoms I had, was constipation. So as I worked on myself from the late 80s, excuse me, into the early 90s, I thought, wow, this is so remarkable that I've gotten such a change in my own health after all these years. And my health problems started in the first grade, or even before that, when I was had been given so many antibiotics that it just messed up my whole microbiome, as we call it today. So I went and changed my diet, and I got to feeling so much better. And as Elizabeth was saying earlier, I live in the state of Florida, and I thought, you know what, I want to share this with other people, but I kind of don't know how, And it was early in the 90s, and I went back to school and I got re-educated in nutrition and cleansing. And I was very fortunate to work in a clinic, a natural health clinic, in the early 90s, which was unheard of back then. But there were a lot of medical doctors who were transitioning at that time into natural. And so I was just fortunate enough to be at the right time, the right place. And so I walked into a clinic and I worked an apprenticeship program for a few years with an MD and a clinic that specialized really back then in detox and cleansing. And we did the sauna. We didn't have the infrared sauna then. We did the steam cabinets where your head sticks out, really. And we wrapped people in wraps for clay wraps. We did colon therapy. We did massage, acupuncture. So I learned all of these modalities, and I worked with people and doctors for years. And as an herbalist. Then I went to school and became an herbalist. And as that transition happened, and I was working with clients at the time, I began to do herbal formulations for the clients, because at that time in the early 90s, there wasn't anything out there very much. I mean, as in terms of fiber, if you went to a store, there was only psyllium fiber. And what I found working in a clinic was that psyllium fiber for especially women was very irritating and really caused a lot more gas and bloating. So over time, as I, wrap myself around herbal remedies, I started formulating for the clinics. I in the early 90s, I myself started opening natural health clinics, and I opened 5 natural health clinics in the early 90s. So I trained for the state of Florida for practitioners, taught anatomy, physiology. So I had a deep understanding. Once I took a product to the health food stores, which was in 1997, I had formulated a product under Renew Life, which is the company that I founded at that time. And I formulated those formulas. Specifically, I had yeast formulas and parasite formulas, and that's how the whole thing evolved. So going back to this subject that we're on this evening, even when I started in the early 90s, there was never people coming from a doctor's office saying, well, I've got IBS. I don't even think that came around until the early 2000s. If it did, I don't remember it. But anyway, so this evening, we've transitioned now into understanding more about what's going on in here. And so that's what you're going to learn this evening. I hope I'm going to flip this right. Yes. So if you go into the first, if we look at bacteria, and I have a way to kind of make this kind of understanding. Bacteria, there are 3 kinds of organisms that are in this. And when I say microbiome, what I mean by that is the collective bacteria that lives in our digestive system. And it's bacteria, it's good yeast, good bacteria, bad bacteria, it's viruses. All of these things live in harmony, hopefully, inside of our digestive tract. And if you think about that or look at it, it's the weight of a brick. So think about a brick, not the size, but the weight, 3 to 4 pounds living inside of us. And I'm sure if you've listened to any other people speak on the microbiome, they'll say to you, well, we're 10% of our cells in our body are human and 90% of them are bacteria. So we're 90% bacteria and 10% human. So our bacteria is really what we are living through, so to speak. And when the National Institutes of Health began to fund the microbiome project back in the early 2000s, what that meant was money went to the university so that the microbiologists there could do studies about the bacteria and what it does for us in terms of our health. And that's why we've had this big explosion of information on how the good bacteria, bad bacteria, viruses, things like this affect us, is because these wonderfully brilliant microbiologists got money from the National Institutes of Health to begin studying it. And even in 2015, I wrote the book, The Skinny Gut Diet, and that was where the National Institutes of Health had funded the study on what bacteria inside of our gut made us have more weight gain and what bacteria made us lose weight. So that was, some more information that came about. So just for people watching this evening, the only reason I want you to see this is to understand this little chart here is that there is a really big, I guess you could say, amount of bacteria, other things, viruses and all that inside of us. And again, it's the weight of a brick. So one of the things that has never been taught much in the industry is how does our digestive system rely on our nervous system? Okay, that's not been something that's been taught. Now we do have the gut-brain connection, which I'll talk a little bit about. But if you look at this chart here, I wonder if I got my little pointer. It showed up tonight. Usually it won't show up, but anyway. So you've got the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spine, and then your autonomic nervous system, which is divided into, many people know, your parasympathetic, which is what makes things happen without your consciousness, and the sympathetic, which is fight or flight. So we have those two sides of this autonomic nervous system. However, there's a third nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system, and it is only, folks, in the small intestine. So inside of the lining of the small intestine, embedded in there is a third nervous system. It is part of the central nervous system. It just doesn't react in the same way. And that black arrow right here that's going from the central nervous system down to this right here it's called the vagus nerve. And that's where we're finding most of the problems with irritable bowel or Sibo or SIFO, or if you have sporadic contractions. So think about it. If you're constipated, you probably don't have many contractions because that's what makes you have a bowel movement. But if you've got too much stimulation, you could potentially have diarrhea because you've got overstimulation. Well, the thing that controls all of that is this vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is called the wandering nerve because it operates outside of the central nervous system, but it's very, very important in understanding your contractions in the large and small intestine. So it also is assist in the mind-body connection. So one of the things that helps with the nervous system is meditation, it's yoga, it's deep breathing, it's prayer, it's all of these things that help calm us and make us feel connected. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this vagus nerve, but you're going to see more and more and more science come out on this because we now know that this vagus nerve is what's causing a lot of the problems that people are having when their bowel is irritable or when they're having gas, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. So if we go further, oops, sorry, wrong way. To not make this complicated, there is a particular movement that's only in the small intestine, and that is called the migrating motor complex. And that's what this enteric nervous system controls, only in the small intestine. So what it means is the digestive system. So let's say you eat food, goes to your stomach, and the stomach churns it up and liquefies it. And so it comes out in small amounts into the upper part of your small intestine. Not in large amounts, in small amounts, because that's where also your liver, gallbladder, and your pancreas connect there to begin to digest your protein, starches, and fats. So as the food leaves the stomach into the first part of the small intestine, that's when this enteric nervous system starts to control the movement of food throughout the small intestine into the colon. Because ideally what you want is you want the food to be digested and the waste of the food to enter the colon so that in the morning after you completing eating your food for the evening, you have a bowel movement in the morning. And so some people can have right here slow motility, like I just said. Some people can have fast motility, which means the movement's too fast. But what we call this enteric nervous system is we call it the housekeeper. So what it means is, and this is a very important fact that I'm going to probably say 3 or 4 times this evening. You must, when you eat your last meal of the day, you have to wait 3 hours before you lay flat. And the reason that is because the reason they call this enteric nervous system the housekeeper is ideally, folks, you do not want a lot of food in the upper gut laying there when you lay down to go to sleep. That is creating the #1 problem. So what that means is if you wait 3 hours, and I'm really on this right now because I have been through in the last 4 years a lot of stress. And one of the things going back to the vagus nerve that disrupts digestion is stress. So I'm very rigid now. If I eat even my last meal at 7 o'clock, I'm not going to lay down flat until 10 o'clock. So I wait until that happens. Well, what happens is our body's so knowledgeable. So when that time comes that you've eaten your last meal and you wait 3 hours, there is a hormone. So think of this just like estrogen, or think of it like, any other hormone that you have. This hormone is stimulated when the stomach is empty. And what it does is it stimulates this vagus nerve it's not peristalsis, it's called propulsion. So when the stomach gets just about empty, this hormone called motilin right here, I've got the arrow on it, goes, okay, the stomach's empty, all this food's in the small intestine being digested. We want to move this food as fast as we can into the colon so that this being has a bowel movement next morning. Well, guess what? If your stomach's never empty, then that hormone is never secreted. And so all of that food in the upper GI tract and the upper small intestine, which sits right by your liver, sits there and ferments and creates more toxins all night long. And that's why it's really important to understand this whole migrating motor complex and understanding that hormones in your digestive system, and many people don't talk about this because we all talk about estrogen and testosterone and cholesterol and all these other hormones, but the digestive system has the same hormones. They're just different. A hormone is a signal. It signals something to happen. So in your digestive system, you have like leptin, you have ghrelin, and you have motilin. And these are hormones that help with movement and getting food moved from one part of the small intestine to the other. So if you look at Sibo, like I said, that's a bacterial overgrowth, or Sifo is a fungal. Now, we all have good and bad yeast and bacteria, and that's okay. We all should have a mixture of the good, the neutral, and the bad. So what we have is, if, just like I said, let's say that you continually don't move the food from the small intestine through the rest of the digestive system here. So look at, if I do the arrow here, this middle area here of the small intestine that sits, we don't stretch it out, but it's the size of a tennis court. Okay, so that's the space size of it. It's 22 feet long, all scrunched up in there. And then, of course, wrapped around it is your colon. So what happens here is, if this bacteria stays up in the upper digestive tract, it produces gases. And gases are what starts the bloating to happen to. So many of you go, well, I can drink a glass of water and I bloat. Well, guess what? The reason you do is because you've had food sitting in the upper small intestine that's creating gases through fermentation. And that's what's causing the gassiness. Now, the cramping and the bloating happen later sometimes in the colon. So we'll get into that. So why does this occur? Well, one issue I just explained to you was because motility, in other words, you're too much food up in here when you go to sleep, is one reason, and it sits there and ferments. And this is kind of strange to people, but we think of the word, and you've heard the word many times, called peristalsis, which is the muscle contraction. Once you put food in the mouth and it gets into the esophagus, that's the movement, peristalsis, that moves it through the whole digestive system, not just the small intestine. So what happens is the colon, which is where most of, I'm showing you here with the arrow, is where most of your bacteria is. Your colon is sort of your sewer system. And so what people don't realize is we can have something called reverse peristalsis. And what that means is there's a little ileocecal valve right here. Many of you know where that is. And what happens is the colon backwashes all of its contents up into this small intestine and up into the upper digestive system. And that's a bad thing. And what it means is the ileocecal valve right here is malfunctioning and it's staying open. So when the reverse, it's really a muscle contraction. So when it reverses itself, and the muscle contraction backwashes all this bacteria backwards in through this whole small intestine up into the upper part of the small intestine, that's where you create even more of this fermentation and these gases that are creating a lot of the bloating that you're feeling. And a lot of things occur due to that. So what we have is right here, the undigested food ferments. So think of it like fermenting anything, like fermenting your foods, like fermenting, I mean, alcohol is fermented, wine is fermented. We have a lot of good fermentation that occurs with our foods. We all think of the, sauerkraut and kimchi and all that we eat. That's good fermentation that we eat these foods. But the fermentation that occurs in the upper small intestine is usually either methane, and think about that for a minute, and hydrogen. Okay. So if you've got methane production in your upper small intestine, okay, your liver's right there. Okay. We're going to look a little bit more at that. Your liver's sitting right there. So let's say you've got fermentation going on in your upper GI tract. And what that is doing is producing methane. Well, methane would be like drinking alcohol, but you're not drinking alcohol. You're just fermenting foods. And that's what begins to create the problem that really affects about 100 million people in our country today is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So the symptoms of that are gas, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. So if any of you out there look at gas and bloating. Now, gas is a normal byproduct of digestion, and it's not bad to have gas in your body. Sorry, I have to drink water. And the bloating, but that's abnormal. If you have like where you feel like right here, and the way I'm touching myself is right up under, right below my ribs in the upper part of the small intestine. So if you've got gas and bloating there to where you feel like, oh, I feel terrible and I have a bloated feeling, that's not normal. Okay. And usually you'll have abdominal pain. Now, where does that occur? You can have abdominal pain. And what happens is once you wake up in the morning, they found this through statistical studies that many people with IBS have this bloating up in here, right in this area. I'm putting on this woman's shirt here, right here. And this is the liver right here. And so on this side, on the right side of your body. And so the liver sitting there producing methane, which is alcohol. And so you're developing fatty livers. And then the other thing that happens is because you're not moving the food correctly down to the colon, then what you'll have in the morning, mostly this is a symptom in the morning, is a lot of cramping. And sometimes with the cramping, that can create more of elimination in some people, but diarrhea in others. Now, what does this mean with fatigue? Okay, this is a very interesting thing. Fatigue, believe it or not, when you produce all of these byproducts due to your food not digesting properly in the upper small intestine, every time a bacteria takes something in, it produces a byproduct. It's just like us. We take food in, we eliminate food. We all do that, and so do bacteria. And one of the things with the negative bacteria and with the methane production or the hydrogen production is when these little bacteria up here begin to multiply, so you gain more and more of the negative bacteria and you develop more and more methane or hydrogen production, guess what they do? They compete with you for the nutrients of your food. So they take your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants, especially iron. They like iron. So they will take iron, and you won't get the benefit of the iron in your food, but they'll take the iron, or they'll take the nutritional nutrients that you're eating, and they'll use them for their own nutrients. So that's why the more of the negative bacteria that you create and fungus that you create in the upper gut, you become more tired and you develop nutritional deficiencies because of that, because the bacteria is eating all your food, really producing byproducts that's causing you pain. And that the beat goes on and on and on, because people don't know where to go with that, because typically, they go and say, well, I have gas and bloating. And, I work with several traditional GI doctors here in my area. And I found that, they're very, very open to, I know all of them are not, but the ones, they're open to understanding this whole thing with Sibo and SIFO because they've been diagnosing IBS for years and years and years, but there's no drug for it, so to speak, you know? And so what's happened is you get into more of the malabsorption and the leaky gut because the gut becomes leaky because you create inflammation because you're making all these gases and these gases are not healthy. So one of the things we create is gas and bloating, and that continues and the beat goes on. And so people will say to me, it doesn't matter what I eat, I have gas and bloating. So we have to get to the bottom of it. And of course, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is rampant. And originally I just put down here IBS, and we used to say candida overgrowth, or we still say candida overgrowth in the digestive system. And people relate to that because in 1970, Dr. William Crook and these doctors on the East Coast started seeing all these women that were coming in with all this chronic fatigue, and they were being sent to psychiatrists because they thought, well, there's nothing wrong with them. There's just, you know, they keep complaining. However, they figured out back in the 70s that the problem was candida overgrowth in the gut. And that was what was creating a lot of the problems that women were having with chronic fatigue. So it's been around for a long time, but because of science, we're beginning to, you know, understand a little bit more about it. So as you can see in this picture right here, the gas and bloating usually, and this is a good way for me to explain. You see that little thing at the end of the stomach there? That's called there are 3 notches, sphincters, muscles in the digestive tract. You have one right here, if you look above the stomach, and that's between the stomach and the esophagus. And that's a little thing that opens and closes, a little notch. Once food enters the stomach, it shuts itself down so that it doesn't back up into the esophagus. And so many people out there have reflux and GERD because that little notch doesn't operate well. And so pressure backs up the contents of the stomach into the esophagus. And of course, those kind of things eventually can create cancer and Barrett's esophagus and things like that. So that little notch there is very important. And then this one at the end of the stomach, this is the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. And this is the first place where the stomach should spit out liquid food right into here in very small amounts. And then your pancreas, where the lady's thumb is right there. And then your liver right here secretes your bile salt and other things right into that area. That's your major area of most of your digestion, is the first 8 inches of your small intestine. So what happens is this bacteria, fungus sits in here, and that's why this person is grabbing themselves or holding themselves right here, because this is where the area where you first begin to see the pain. And then, as I said earlier, then abdominally, as it moves on down through the small intestine and into the colon, then we move into where you see another type of symptom, which can be intermittent signals from the vagus nerve, meaning is it contracting? Is it contracting too slow? Is it contracting too fast? And so that's one of the things that happens. Then you either experience constipation, diarrhea, or you swing between the two. Now, on this lower slide, this is what I want to share with people. People always think that their colon looks like that beautiful picture I showed you originally, that, you know, it's just up, across, and down. And that's what people think that their colon looks like. I call it a textbook colon, but because a lot of people don't have that type of colon. There can be narrowing areas. This is an x-ray. There can be the transverse colon, which goes across the middle of you there, that can droop. And that happens to a lot of women due to pregnancy. And that can create in older women a lot of bladder incontinence, because that transverse colon moves down over the bladder and sits there and creates pressure. So this is a ballooning here at the end of the colon. And a lot of that happens due to constipation, because remember, the colon is just a muscle, just like your arm muscle, and it can become flaccid and weak whenever the signals, and it doesn't have a lot of contraction. And then the the matter that's in the colon doesn't leave, it sits in there. And so one of the things is in the fatigue, again, I talked about earlier, is the bacteria and the fungus compete with your food, with you and your food for nutrients. And so we end up with all of these different things. And of course, physically, there's poor diet, of course, lack of sleep. Sleep's very important for your digestive system. It can't rebuild itself without good sleep. And it can also affect your adrenals. So if any of you have, a lot of adrenal fatigue, it can be due to a long-term problem with this Sibo and SIFO condition. So if you look at the causes of it in this slide right here, high methane means you're fermenting, and hydrogen is another gas that's produced. And it's all around your carbohydrates. Okay, so that's the issue, and sugar. So, you either have slow or fast. So if you look at the little chart over here, you've got the carbs, you've got the production of too much hydrogen, and in too much hydrogen, you have diarrhea. And if you have too much of the methane, then you can have constipation. So that's the way sometimes if you go to a natural doctor, they'll test your breath and they'll say, is it high in methane or is it high in hydrogen? And there are new instruments coming out now. They're called, I'm writing a new book, and I've got it in the book. It's called AIRE, AIRE, I think, and you blow in it. And they've actually upgraded this because it's really difficult to measure the hydrogen. Methane's pretty easy. It's kind of like, if you were driving a car intoxicated, they would give you a breath test. And that's exactly what this is. They're testing the levels of gases in you. And that's what and I think even traditional doctors do it today. Now, there's another organism that's in the soil called archaea. Think of the furniture store, IKEA, because I wanted to say archaea, but it's archaea is the way it's pronounced. And when the earth was formed, archaea is in the soil, in the deserts, in the ocean. It's an organism that's all over our planet. It was never abundant in us in the digestive system. Some of it, got in there due to us eating fruits and vegetables and things like that had the archaea on it. However, it wasn't abundant in us. But today we're finding that this archaea is abundant in us. And that's what's creating, because it's the highest producer of methane. Now, this is kind of interesting, and this is a joke. This is not meant to be real, but, we're trying to reduce methane in the environment, less cows, less methane production. And I was saying the other day to someone, we never thought of ourselves as methane producers, you know what I mean? But we, as human beings, are producing an overabundance of methane also. And that's due to this organism right here called archaea. And even though it's okay to have it in the digestive system, but to have it in abundance there is a problem because of the production of the methane. So anyway, so getting into that, and then the methane production. And so in the malabsorption leaky gut part of it, we have insufficient vitamins and minerals. And also, again, the different organisms like this, like I said, they like iron. They like to take our iron. They like to take B12, and they like to take our vitamin D from us. So when you look at, I've had so many people that are deficient in vitamin D, and which is one of the most critical supplements we can take. And they go get tested and they go, well, I'm low in vitamin D. And well, everything goes back to your gut, everything. So maybe it's because your gut's out of balance. You've got too much of this negative bacteria in there that's competing for you for vitamin D. And the other thing to remember about vitamin D is it is a fat soluble vitamin, and it needs to be consumed with fat in the diet. So whether it's an egg, whether it's, avocado or olive oil or whatever you're eating for a meal, that's the best way to take your vitamin D, because you want absorption of it. And I'll never forget, I had this person go, well, I've got the liquid vitamin D and I take it every day. And so she had a blood test and she was really low on vitamin D. And I went, okay, you're low on vitamin D. So there's two things. Your gut's out of balance, number one. And number two, you can't just take vitamin D on an empty stomach because you're not going to absorb it. So that's just a key thing to think about when you take vitamin D. And I take B12 every day myself because I'm older. And I think that, it's a big issue that we keep vitamin B12 in us. Now, that contributes to obesity. This is a big, big factor here. If you've had problems with weight, it doesn't have to be obesity, just say you're overweight. The number one thing, and I wrote all about this, I took 10 people for almost a year when I wrote Skinny Gut Diet back in 15 and 16. And I took 10 people. I had 3 men and 7 women, and I stool tested them. And that's the one reason I have a lot of the information I do, because I came from a clinic. I started doing stool analysis back in probably 1994. So I still do them today. And so what I saw when I did the Skinny Gut Diet with the 10 people is every single person, I did a baseline. So they weren't taking probiotics, they weren't taking digestive enzymes or increasing fiber or anything like that. I just baseline tested them. Every single one of them had what I call the fat bacteria was really high, and what I call the B skinny bacteria in that individual was low. So if you've got that imbalance in your gut bacteria, and they've done so many clinical studies on this with mice, and I did it with humans when we did it, is you're going to have obese, because they've given the bacteria to skinny mice and they became obese and never changed their diet. You see what I mean? And then they gave the B skinny bacteria to mice that were overweight or fat and they lost weight. So we know that the gut bacteria is a big indicator of whether or not we can hold weight or whether or not we don't have enough weight. But most of the time it's obesity. And here's the reason. Bacteria in your gut, if it's the fat bacteria, it consumes more calories from your food, and that's the key factor. So if you've got an overabundance of this fat bacteria, you're going to absorb more calories than the person that has an overabundance of the B skinny bacteria. See what I mean? So if they got an overabundance or even a balance of the B skinny bacteria, their weight's going to stay stabilized. But if they've got an overabundance of the fat bacteria, then no matter what they do, because the bacteria is taking the calories out of the food and you're absorbing more calories. And that's sort of the basis of all of that in sort of a synopsis. So if you look at this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I cannot say enough about it. And I will tell you, it's not just people who are overweight that have this. I've seen people who are skinny and thin that have fatty liver disease. And if you look at the healthy liver here, which is red and beautiful, and the liver is an organ, the largest organ in our body. It weighs about 3.5 pounds. However, one of the things about the liver is it regenerates itself. It's one of the only organs. Let's say you had an injury and a doctor cut part of your liver out, it would regrow. And I worked with a doctor who was a surgeon, and I'll never forget this story. He had a patient come in, and she rode horses, and the horse had kicked her in her liver. And when he opened her up, 3/4 of her liver was gone. So he cut it out. She was a very young person in her late teens. And he said a year later, it had grown back. And so that's the regenerative abilities of our liver. That's why your supplementation for liver supplements are very important. Keeping your liver methylating and detoxifying efficiently is extremely important for the health of us long term. Now, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in number 2 here, this is also reversible. And again, it just doesn't mean people who are overweight. It can be people who are thin, but what happens here is, think about this. You've got food sitting there fermenting and producing methane. So the liver's trying to process all the toxins, not only that, but all the other toxins and pesticides and things like that are coming in and out of the body. So what the liver will do is it's so efficient that if it can't detoxify something, it stores it. because it's going to say, okay, let me put this over here for a minute and I'll come back to it later. Well, if there's an abundance of that coming through, an overabundance of it. So let's say you take a lot of medication, or you're, subjected to a lot of pesticides in the food, or outgassing of chemicals that come through our vapors that come through our nose. If your liver cannot process those, it's not going to give up. What it's going to do is say, okay, I'm going to stick this up here. And what the liver does is surrounds it in fat so that it can go on to something else. And I used to tell a little joke, and this shows my age definitely, but the show that used to be on I Love Lucy, and I'll never forget that segment with the conveyor belt and the chocolates. And the conveyor belt, I'm going to do a video on this one day myself, because I've got red hair, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to have these chocolates moving on a conveyor belt, and the liver sitting over here, and me trying to eat all the chocolates and stuff them down my shirt and do all this. And that's similar to what happens to your liver. It can't process all that enough. So it begins to store it all, thinking, okay, I'll get back to that. But think about it, folks, with all that the liver has to deal with, there's 80 chemicals floating in our blood and urine per the Environmental Working Group that we cannot process. 80. So 80 chemicals floating around in our blood and urine is a pretty big load. Now, not to mention, we're producing these gases that's contributing to the problem. And then the next big one that's happening right now, and this GI doctor that I work with is wanting me to do more on and talk about it, is called non-alcoholic steatic hepatitis. And basically what this is, it's fatty liver gone a step further. And so you look at that, and that's the next step. And this is not reversible. Now, whether or not we could reverse the fatty liver at this point, I don't know if there's a lot of science on that yet, but still you have to try, to move that along. So those are the different stages that the liver goes through, from healthy to cirrhotic. And of course, we know cirrhotic that's pretty hard to change. So if we look at what do we do that continues to create this problem? Okay. One, and this is so critical, is low stomach acid. Now, this is a complicated subject, and I won't be able to go into it thoroughly this evening. It's a lecture in itself. Okay. As we grow older, if you look at the stomach here, the stomach is your sterilization tank. The only way an organism, a virus, food poisoning like listeria, any pathogenic organism, if there's stomach acid here and you bring it from the mouth through the esophagus into the stomach, and there's high hydrochloric acid in the stomach, then that organism cannot survive to get into the small intestine, get to the wall of the small intestine, and get into the bloodstream, which that's what makes you sick. So what we have is the stomach acid levels must stay at very high levels when you're eating food, because again, it sterilizes everything we're taking in. There are certain problems with this. One is, as we age, in many people, the stomach acid levels go down. However, because we've been in, I guess you could say, a vicious cycle with the traditional medicine world, in that, we take something where everything is like one diagnosis. Okay, you have this symptom, reflux and GERD or whatever. So I guess you could say the treatment is the same. We just take acid blocking medication, and that's the cure for everybody. Well, that is a wrong cure. And I had a conversation with the GI doctor the other day, and I said, why do you do that? And he said, because we don't have any other solutions. That's the solution. Well, there is, prescriptive acid blocking medication today, and then there's the ones over the counter. And that's unfortunate, because now people can randomly just pick them up and take them. And as you know, I'm pretty sure they've taken one of them off the market because of the correlation between that and stomach cancer. So there's a big class action lawsuit with that. And we're going to find out that now, if you have an ulcer, taking an acid blocker for 7 days is okay. And if you read the literature that's in the medication, it says do not take for over 2 weeks. And that's proper. That's the right thing to say. Because if you have an ulcer, it'll burn you up and it makes you feel terrible and have a lot of pain. So the thing is, you should not be going into the drugstore and taking acid blocking medication every day. You need to get to the bottom of why you're feeling that way. So is it low stomach acid? Is it high stomach acid? Is it stress that's doing it? There's a lot of factors involved. So the other thing here is compromised liver, and I've talked a lot about that. So in this liver right here, we have something called bile. See that? B-I-L-E? Well, that's what the liver uses. There's little, I call them tributaries in the liver, like tributaries that run to the river. And I call the gallbladder and that little gallbladder flow right there from the liver to the gallbladder, I call that the river. And these are the tributaries. So in bile, we have 3 things. We have bile salt. So when you eat and food leaves the stomach, then bile salt is secreted from the gallbladder, and then the pancreas right there secretes lipase, and that's how you emulsify fats. So no matter what, that has to operate. The other part of bile is toxins. It's one of the ways I said, remember I said if the liver can't get toxins out of the body, then it stores them in its cells, within its own cells. And then the third thing is hormones, your estrogen, your cholesterol. If you have excess estrogen, and women in your perimenopausal time can have excess estrogen, you have fibrocystic breast, or you have excess estrogen. I had that in my 40s. And what that means is that there's too much estrogen being recirculated. So the estrogen and cholesterol excess gets thrown into this bile that goes into the small intestine, and fiber from your food should absorb the excess estrogens, cholesterol, and toxins and send them out through the colon. That's the way it should work. However, if the fiber in your diet is really low, which it is for most of Americans, they get 12 to 15 grams a day. We need 25 to 35. Then this bile, nothing in this bile is absorbed here. And what happens is it's reabsorbed and goes back to the liver. And that's how we develop cholesterol problems and estrogen problems, because we have a recirculating issue with anything that doesn't go out the other end is going back to the liver. And so that's why the liver becomes burdened. And then the pancreas insufficiency, and the pancreas has 2 functions. Of course, it makes insulin, but it also is very important in the digestion of our foods. It makes the digestive enzymes, protease, lipase, and amylase, and other enzymes right here to where we can digest our fats and proteins. And this is a big junction here. So we have to keep this in mind. So if you need, you're not digesting well, then you want to keep your digestive enzymes in after you eat food. You want to take your digestive enzymes so it helps with this whole thing of digesting the food and it not sitting there absorbing and producing gases. And then you've got this bacterial migration. And I spoke about this earlier, and this is a bigger picture here so I can show you. So this is the ileocecal valve right here. Now the contents from the small intestine, which is right here, going into the colon are liquid, okay? It's not solid. Everything in the small intestine is still liquid, okay? So when it comes over into the colon here, what the colon does is it presses it through peristalsis. It's a muscle, so it presses it together and takes the water out of it. It's the one other way that we get hydration in the body is in the colon through the what's called osmosis, but through the absorption of your hydration. And as it moves up, it's liquid. Then it becomes solid around here across the transverse, because as it moves across and you have muscle contraction, it takes the water out, makes the stool more solid, so that as it comes up and down and around and out, you have a solid bowel movement. That's why when people have too much motility, that's why they have diarrhea, because the matter doesn't stay in here long enough to become solid. So the movement's too quick with diarrhea so that you never have a solid bowel movement. It just goes out the other end liquid. So that's the motility is the reason for a lot of this. So we've got the backwashing, which I talked about. So the 3 notches I talked about earlier is right here between the stomach and esophagus, between the stomach and the small intestine, and then here between the colon and the small intestine, the ileocecal valve. These malfunction due to hormone malfunction. Motilin, ghrelin, leptin, all of these hormones get out of whack. And so you've got the contents going everywhere, or going too fast or too slow. So this is the most important thing I can share with you in this whole presentation, and that is, don't go to sleep with a lot of food in your stomach. Just don't, wait. Even if you sit up in bed, and sometimes this is what I do. I sit up in bed and read like this. I'm up, I'm not laying down. So I do that because I'm older now and I don't want problems with GERD or reflux or anything like that. Of course, moderate alcohol consumption. And then we have to understand that giving the strength to this vagus nerve, and that again is not through sometimes so much, the number one problem in terms of a supplement for the vagus nerve is B vitamins. So your B12, your B vitamins is what helps this muscle contraction, but also the deficiency in your mind body. Are you so stressed out? Are you producing too much cortisol? Do you meditate? Do you do yoga, deep breathing? Things like this are what really support this vagus nerve. Sometimes it's not a lot just about taking a supplement. It's a lot about balancing that mind body and balancing, happiness in our lives. And I know we've all been through very stressful times in the last couple of years. So hopefully it will get better. And so step 1 in our Sibo SIFO suggestions is you have to reduce carbohydrates for a while. And more so, I'm not really a big FODMAP diet person. It's very restrictive. And quite frankly, folks, if you can get the right bacteria balance in your gut, you don't need to do eating healthy plant foods and eating small amounts of protein. And if you're grain free or keto or paleo or whatever you are, if you're doing those different programs and diets and you don't feel digestively, you don't have gas and bloating, you don't have all these things, then that's probably the right solution for you. So my solution is, in this condition, you're going to have to reduce sugar and you're going to have to reduce simple carbs. There's a ton of diets out there. I even have some of them in the Vital Detox kit. I actually put a little pamphlet in here on what to do because I've been doing this for so many years. And I will tell you, the same thing I'm telling you today, I was saying in 1990. So it hasn't changed. So the point of it is we've got to start looking at our diets, doing what's good for us. It's really difficult, I think, to give one diet fits all because we're all different. So for example, if you've got a problem in your liver and you don't digest fat well and you're on the keto diet, that's a problem because I don't care if it's olive oil or avocado or a steak, it's fat. So if you can't digest fat, then that wouldn't be the right program for you. Do you see what I mean? You need to get your fat digestion better, like getting the bile secretion from the liver up to par and getting the lipase or taking a digestive enzyme for fat like lipase in order to be able to digest fat. So you have to do what's good for you. The prebiotic fibers, okay? And I really hate to say this, but your prebiotic fibers, which has been really sort of a staple for us because the prebiotics feed the probiotics. That's the food for the probiotics to multiply. However, if you've got a lot of bacteria up here and you're taking in a lot of prebiotic fiber, you're going to have more gas. So for a period of time, what I've done is created a fiber that's insoluble. It has very little of the prebiotic fiber, but it's very important because insoluble fiber is what creates the bulk in your colon to create a bowel movement. So you get the bulking of the colon and the digestive tract, but you don't get the gas and bloating of the prebiotic fiber. Now, I'm not saying that you never take prebiotic fiber again. You just reduce it while you're trying to get this bacteria level down. And so then we go to, again, I've touched on this, the meditation, breathing, and exercise doesn't have to be an end all be all. It just is walking. It's things that are pleasurable to us. And then you've got probiotics. Now, again, I want to mention this because many of the naturopaths and doctors suggest, well, don't take probiotics while you're doing a Sibo or SIFO program. That's also very individual. And the reason and the way you know it is if you took the probiotic, you would increase your gas and bloating. However, most people, a few people have that problem, but a lot of people do not. So it doesn't mean that. But I'll show you how I break it down. So step one is the vital detox. And you see the little thing I have in the top of the box. That is what I'm showing you on the screen. So step one is we take the kit. The kit's two parts. Part one, you take one out of each in the morning and one out of each before bed. Now, part one is support for your liver, because remember what I said, as bacteria dies, it creates more toxins. So the liver, so what a lot of people feel when they cleanse or detox, we call it Herxheimer's reaction, we call it detox reaction, and that's because the liver is starting to handle more than it can handle. And so what I've done with this program is I've actually added to the formulas a liver detox. And then part one is your what we call antimicrobials. And that consists of your oregano oil, your thyme, and your, let's see, I have in here the oregano oil, the thyme, the clove, the black cumin seed, and cinnamon leaf. And what you do is I found a way, which I'm so excited about, because I was going to have to do this in a tincture. And boy, did I have a lot of problems with people complaining about that, because oregano oil obviously doesn't taste very good. This is a delayed release capsule, just like we used in our probiotics. So you swallow it, it goes into the stomach, bypasses the acid, and it hits the small intestine exactly where you need it. So this is a really important new feature that we have, because too many people didn't want to take tinctures, and I understand that. I've been in this a long time. I can probably taste anything. My husband like, you can taste anything, it doesn't bother you. And I'm like, well, however, one point I want to make on this program is this has no laxative in it. Nothing like that. It's not to increase elimination, because too many people with this condition have diarrhea. However, what I have added to the box, if you are constipated, because a lot of people are, I've added a sample pack of our Vital Lax, and you can see that down here on the bottom. I added a sample of that in the kit. So if you are constipated, then try this with your program, and it will increase the elimination. And then we have the Vital Lax in a separate bottle. And this is my go-to, because like I said early in the program, I said that I suffer from constipation. So anything I do outside of my normal realm, travel, eating, during the holidays, I have to have this. And it's okay. It's magnesium, and I don't use cascara, senna, or anything like that, but it's the magnesium and aloe, and I've got slippery elm, marshmallow, fennel, and all these nice soothing herbs in here. So it's really nice. So you've got the kit. Now this kit is set up for 14 days. And if you've been on the rifaximin or the antibiotic even once or twice, what most people find is if they've been diagnosed with this condition, they'll go on an antibiotic and they feel pretty good while they're on the antibiotic. The problem is when they come off of it, they go back to where they were. That's why you have to have a long-term solution. And that's why I developed this. You may have to do several boxes of it and keep your diet in check while you're doing the program. Remember, this didn't happen overnight. We are not in the world in the natural world where we cure something overnight. It takes time for our bodies to adjust. If you have the problem, then you want a solution that's going to hold you over. So we do also at Vital Planet have an 800 customer service line, and that's my family. My sister's been on with that, doing that for 20 years. So let me tell you, she can answer a lot of questions. So if you get into it and you have questions, please call us because we really want to help you. The other thing is, like I said, the vital fiber, which is in your step 1 here, right here, you've got the vital detox and the fiber. So this is pea, hemp, and flax. This is all organic. It's also got the slippery elm and the marshmallow, so it's soothing. So this can be taken whether or not you're constipated. And I'll tell you, I'm doing little videos now on ways to get this in because people love it. It mixes up really well. It tastes really nutty. I've got things where I'm having people put it on their salads, putting it in their salad dressing. So you make your olive oil and your herbs and your vinegar and all that, you put in your salad dressing, add a teaspoon of that, and then you can keep it in the refrigerator long term. And that's another way to get your fiber in. I want to give people options to getting fiber in because sometimes they think that it tastes bad. This is delicious. I mean, I have people calling on 800 going, I have never tasted anything this good. It is so good. So if you want to start adding it different ways, you could put it in your yogurt. You could put it in, any type of food because it doesn't have a bad taste and it mixes really well. Now down the road, the step 2, after you finish doing this, and again, you can call us and ask us, about, it depends on how long you've had the condition, of how long you're going to stay on the vital detox and get better, and we can be your help along the way. And so will Marlene's. If they feel like they've got a person there or one of their customers that they feel like needs a little bit more information, they're going to recommend that you call us. And the reason I developed the customer service line where a real person talks to you, that's amazing in this world today, is because before, when I was I started out in the cleansing world, and there was no way that you don't need some type of customer support when you're going through cleansing, and especially long-term problems like this that people have. The other thing that is, so on step 2, if you don't want to add your probiotic in while you're on the vital detox, that's fine. You don't have to. If you do want to, then the vital flora needs to be taken at a separate time of day. So for example, you're going to take your vital detox morning and night. So you may want to take your probiotic with your lunch or afternoon. And again, remember that this is a delayed release capsule. So one of the things that I just did a video that's going to be on my Facebook and my Instagram is I guess you say, false advertising that's out there saying, oh, this is the only probiotic that bypasses the acid of the stomach. That's just not true. All you have to do is read your label. This is a delayed release veggie cap. So it does, just like the one in the Vital Detox with the oregano oil. This is a delayed release capsule, so it delivers into the digestive system where we need it. And so the rebuild and restore would be your probiotic. Now, this is my favorite product in the whole world. This is the Vital Gut Renew. And quite frankly, we can't hardly keep it in stock anymore. It's just wonderful because it's a powder and it's a scoop. You just put it away. It mixes up really well. And what it is L-glutamine. And L-glutamine, if you have, been into conditions like leaky gut and reflux and GERD and things like that, this again is a powder, and there's a scoop in there, and you put a scoop in water, stir it up, or you can put it in anything but water. Now, this should be taken on an empty stomach. Very, very clear, because your cells in your digestive tract need to uptake the glutamine. The glutamine is what the cells use to make new cells. So in order to overcome inflammation in the gut, you've got to renew your cells. So you automatically, just like when you take a shower, you shed millions of cells off in the shower. Well, so does the digestive system. You recycle the cells of your digestive system every 3 to 5 days. So if you're not making new cells, you're going to end up with inflammation. So it's really important as part of your rebuilding and restoring to start adding in this. In here is also the L-glutamine at 6,000 milligrams per scoop. And we have the organic aloe extract, 200 to 1. It's almost 10,000 milligrams per scoop of aloe. We also have in there the N-acetylglucosamine, which helps the cells bind together and stop the leaky gut from happening. And then we also have in here DGL, which is really good for that's why this is great in a powder, because it helps in the upper part also. I don't travel without this either. If you've eaten something at dinner, even at home, and you don't quite feel right, take a scoop of this. I keep it by my bed, and I always have water there anyway, and I can mix it up. It mixes up very clear. It has ginger in it, and it's kind of bland. It doesn't have a flavor one way or the other, but it's got the marshmallow and the ginger, and all of it's organic. So this is wonderful for those of you that have the problems with reflux and GERD, or that have been diagnosed with leaky gut, or, IBS and all these issues. So I did this 2 ways. I did it so you could start out with just a couple of products, because I didn't want to overwhelm people with, oh my gosh, I've got to take all those products. So what I wanted you to do is start here. If you have the constipation, you have to add that in. But then when you go into your Rebuild and Restore, then these are your staples for that. And so, let's see where I am now. So, oh gosh, I always do this. I get ahead of myself. I'm sorry. But anyway, this just goes over what is in it. The part 1, like I said, is your liver formula. The part 2 is your herbal. It's in a delayed release capsule. And then this fiber is 13 grams of fiber in a serving, which is 2 scoops in here. And see here, the soluble right here is very low in soluble. It's really high in insoluble. And that's what gives you the bulking. Like your grandmother used to say, eat your bran muffin. That's what that means. It means give that colon bulk, and it gives the muscle contraction. It's like working with a weight on your arm. That's what the fiber does in your colon. And then we have the Gut Renew. Then you've right here, the 6,000 milligrams of L-glutamine. Your N-acetylglucosamine, I used to have to use shellfish. I don't have to do that anymore. We found a vegan source for that. So if this makes a new cell, so if L-glutamine makes a new cell, then the N-acetylglucosamine is the glue that holds it together inside your gut. And so you've got the organic aloe, and then all the things down here, like I said, DGL, marshmallow, and ginger, just to help with soothing. And then the Vital Lax is mostly your magnesium, and aloe and slippery elm, and your Triphala, which is really good to strengthen the bowel. Really a great herbal formula. So it's sort of reduce, remove, rebuild, and restore. And again, we have everything, like I said, in the box to guide you with our flyer. And again, we're totally there every day to answer your questions. So I know I went over, Elizabeth. I'm sorry.
No worries. Tonight, or this afternoon has been such a gas to have you with us.
That's funny.
I know I took a lot of notes and learned quite a bit. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope, again, I do videos, and this is on Facebook. So let your friends know that didn't get to see this evening, you go to Facebook. My Facebook is Brenda Watson CNC, and then my Instagram is Brenda Watson Wellness. And I'm posting every day. And again, I'm posting on Mondays, I do little 3-minute videos. I know people can't watch things for a long period of time. So you're welcome to go there and follow me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Or, you know what, Elizabeth, even if people have questions after tonight and they don't want to ask them, you can email them in to me. That's what I've been doing on some of these Zooms. And then we send via you, we send them back through you, Elizabeth, so that you can disseminate them to, whoever needs them.
Definitely, I would love to assist with that.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, I see in the chat box, we had an attendee, Hannah, say that was great info. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Hannah. Thank you for joining me.
Yay! Oh, and we have a question. Do these help with raising stomach acid?
No. You would, in order to up the stomach acid levels, if you're low in stomach acid, the best thing to do is go to the health food store at Marlene's and ask someone in the aisle for betaine hydrochloride, betaine, and you would take that with the meal. Actually, the best way to do it is wait until you eat, because here's what happens. When you think about food, you're already secreting the acid. You don't even have to put the food in your mouth yet. Your thought. When you see food, it's going to start secreting the acid. Now, if you're low in it, obviously, you're not going to secrete much of it. So the best way to do is let the food eat your meal and then add in the betaine hydrochloride at the end of the meal, because that'll finish the digestion process for you. And the way you work that is go in, ask someone in the supplement aisle to give you the supplement. And the way you work that is you start with one, see how you feel after that meal. The next meal, if you don't feel a burning sensation at all, go to two. Where you feel a little bit of burning, back off one. And that's kind of the simple test that I've written in, like the Gut Solutions and the Road to Perfect Health. That's one of the tests that just your own self test, and this is the answer to learn your own body. We've got to start like being aware of what's going on in here,
Oh, yay. Thank you, Brenda. That was really wonderful.
Thank you,
Oh,
Elizabeth.
and Keith said, well done, Brenda. Great info.
Thank you. And again, call us on the 800. Let Marlene's know that, you enjoyed this, and we want to be really helpful, and we really want to help people get better. And, when you're suffering with a lot of gas and bloating and constipation and diarrhea, your life is pretty miserable. And so one of the things we want to do is we want to help people feel better.
Exactly. Get to the root of all health, which is the gut.
And that is the gut, right? Take it from me, 30 years. I was talking about it before it was popular.
Yeah, you're the gut health guru.
I know. I don't know if that's good or bad, Elizabeth. It shows how old I am, right? I did my first lecture on leaky gut in 1994.
Amazing.
I know,
Yes.
it is amazing.
You're a pioneer for the health industry. Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
thanks everyone. Have a great evening. If you have any more questions, send them through Elizabeth. We'll answer every question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and take good care.
Thank you, guys.